This is the CHGO Cubs podcast. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan, and we are coming to you on Sunday, April 14th. Brendan, the Cubs finishing up the first part of their West Coast trip. A few more in Arizona here. But we have a lot to talk about. We'll talk about the series in San Diego. The Cubs taking 2 of 3 here this weekend in Seattle. But more important than anything, how do we feel about my sweater?
I was ready to bring it up. I'm glad you did. How does it feel? Did they make that just for you? Is it tailored to your standards? Because it looks like it is.
It's a little big, but that's okay.
It's a little big.
Yeah, it's a little big,
it fits you. It fits you well. It's nice and snuggly, so you're good to go.
So this was the promo giveaway last week. I wasn't able to make it on the rain delay, for 4 hours, kind of disrupted things. But I wanted to. I told some Twitter followers or folks in the Discord that I would be wearing it, and here I am.
So, when you jumped on, I'm like, am I talking to Pat Hughes?
Hey,
I know, what a compliment.
And does that make you my Ron Coomer?
I can go with Ron Coomer. I was an infielder, so
yeah,
and an all-star, little leaguer.
Yeah. So a lot to talk about, Brendan. Obviously, the San Diego series, I think, we would have liked to have gone a little better. But the Seattle series, really nice set of games for the Cubs here and plenty to talk about. The Cubs, again, taking 2 of 3. They win the final on Sunday by the score of 3-2 behind Javier Assad. The Cubs sit at 9-6. And I think, Brendan, before we jump into some of the specifics, and, as we usually lay out our outline, we will for sure be touching on Michael Busch, one of the hottest hitters around right now, and what is kind of keying his success. I know Brendan has some pitching graphs and thoughts on Jordan Wicks, Javier Assad. Also, as we start this, apparently the Cubs have signed free agent Julio Teheran of former Atlanta Braves fame, I guess. I don't know.
I guess.
We'll talk about that a little bit, but it's not a particularly monumental signing. So I think there's going to be some other stuff folks want to talk about. But we'll talk about it all. But generally, Brendan, obviously you have to finish up this trip in Arizona, finish strong. Arizona, obviously, a tough team. We know the team they had last year and that they've carried over into 2024. But a stretch that started with 3 against the Dodgers, 3 against the Padres, and 3 against the Mariners. Dodgers, obviously one of the best teams in baseball. Padres, a very competitive team in the last few years. Mariners, a recent playoff team, a competitive team. Pretty solid stretch here for the Cubs. I'm definitely pleased with where they sit. And as long as we avoid some sort of disaster in Arizona, this is a really nice stretch to start this season.
Well, you ended that optimistic statement with a disaster in Arizona, and it put me right back in the middle of September last year. And I'm in Arizona right now, so I'm having flashbacks. But generally speaking, if you were to have told me Taillon's going to miss the first 3 weeks of the season, Steele's going to hurt his hamstring, they're going to be without both of them, and they're going to be 9-6 entering the middle of a brutal West Coast trip with the offense producing, I would have taken this in a heartbeat. Of course, there's some concerns perhaps on the late inning bullpen guys. Neris did look shaky. Almonte's been up and down. Jose Cuas has been demoted to AAA. So there are issues that need to be ironed out, but you would imagine, given the ebbs and flows of a national season with a bullpen, that at some point there will be stabilization across the roster, as there typically is.
Well, and I think given the injuries that this team has had, the test of the depth, Jameson Taillon is coming back, so we may talk a little bit about what to expect when you're expecting Jameson Taillon. I knew you would hate that. I don't know why. But given that you have been without Justin Steele since the 5th inning on opening day, you've been out without Taillon this entire time, and all of the questions that we had, what does Michael Busch look like at first base? What does Christopher Morel look like at third? Et cetera, et cetera. 9-6 feels pretty good, Brendan. And you look at kind of a lot of games on this trip, and this weekend was no different. Having your young starting pitchers, Wicks, Assad, try to go deeper in the game. Craig Counsell figuring out which of these relievers he can lean on to kind of step up and perform. You're without Julian Merriweather, who was one of your best relievers last year. I feel pretty good about this. And if you can start to get some of these guys back, and as the chat is saying, kind of iron out some of this bullpen stuff, I think you'd feel really good about where this team is at. Not everybody is performing where you want them to, but a 9-6 start is a 9-6 start, and you're doing it without some pretty key members of this team. So all things considered, a very nice start to this season.
Two of your batters, too, have yet to get hot. Cody Bellinger, the middle of the order guy right now, entering Sunday's game, had a weighted on base average around 240. Nico Hoerner, similarly, not hitting to average, although he's walking more. Those are your two consistent contributors atop the lineup last year. Despite those guys getting off the slow starts, you're seeing emerging performances from Michael Busch, who right now has a WOBA near 500. 4 consecutive games with home runs. Ian Happ looks like every bit of the imagined leadoff hitter we had hoped to see for years ever since Dexter Fowler left. So overall, the majority of the hitters look good. And even though the starting rotation, to your point about depth, even though they have not gone deeper into games, their stuff looks good. Their stuff projects to permit going later into games, talking about Jordan Wicks, talking about Javier Assad as the season progresses. And as we've seen from Assad later last season in September when he went 8 innings in Cincinnati. So the stuff is there, is being proven that it's there. It's just a matter of letting the season go through its ebbs and flows, getting guys back healthy. And to my earlier point, I think that has a high chance of happening once Taillon gets inserted back in the rotation with Steele, and you can deepen that staff by pushing guys into the bullpen.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I think you're in the portion, obviously, still only 15 games in. So guys' numbers are going to fluctuate. Guys are still figuring things out, et cetera. We've certainly seen plenty of guys over the years have cold Aprils and end up having a perfectly great season. But you do look through the order, and I think to be sitting at 9-6, again, with some of those injuries, your bullpen concerns, things like that, and you look through, it has not been the best stretch, though I do agree that I said this, I think when we were on last or when I was in the studio last, really like Ian Happ as the leadoff hitter when he's hitting lefty. But overall, now he's at a 690 OPS after a kind of rough stretch here. Cody Bellinger at 562. Christopher Morel in a little bit of a slump, if you will, down to 715 from where he started the season. Dansby only at 762. Nico at 556. Yan Gomes struggling at the plate to start the year. So some of those guys for sure you expect to get going. They have the track record. Some guys, we know Nico made some adjustments. Cody Bellinger, obviously, who he is after last year is something that still isn't set in stone. But they're doing the point being they have a solid record. They are grinding out some of these wins, and they're doing it while not really getting a top to bottom performance from this lineup. And for at least some of these guys, you're pretty confident that that is going to correct itself and start to stabilize a bit. But I do want to talk about Michael Busch. I want to start with Michael Busch. I think that is the place to start. Also, we saw, was it in the Saturday game? Yeah, Yency Almonte, a really good game on Saturday. Also pitched on Sunday, got a strikeout as well.
Not the best, though, on the 7th inning, but he has gone through
Yes.
spurts, looking good in times.
Just I'm thinking of the entire trade package,
Yeah.
But let's talk about Michael Busch. So he has homered in 4 consecutive games. He is the only rookie since the turn of 2 centuries ago to do so as a Chicago Cub. So since 1901, the number of rookies to homer in 4 consecutive games for the Chicago Cubs is Michael Busch, and that's it. And you look at some of these numbers and the way early in the year, the results were not coming for him. He was hitting the ball hard. His approach looked really good, but the hits weren't necessarily falling. But a lot of people were watching the games and talking, I feel good about this. He looks good at the plate. He's calm. His pitch selection is good. I like what we're seeing despite the results not being there. Now,
Yeah.
Brendan, the results are coming. And I don't remember where I saw it. It could have been in a DM group or on the timeline, but friend of the podcast, Matt Clapp on Twitter, great follow at the blog finds, pointed out that he can't wait for Michael Busch to start hitting in that summer Wrigley wind because he's hitting moonshots. He's a moonshot guy.
He is, which I love.
Right? We've seen Seiya hitting some of those like rockets, lasers,
Yeah,
straight
I'm more of
lines.
a nice, very big moonshot aesthetic guy.
Anthony Rizzo style. Yes.
Oh man.
We love a first baseman that hits a nice arcing home run.
We do.
But it did get me excited. Like, you feel like what Busch is doing is going to translate really well to certain weather and conditions at Wrigley Field. So I'm kind of leading us in there, but talk to me about Michael Busch. What are you seeing from him? And specifically, is there anything that's kind of keying this success for him?
When Busch was acquired, I think we were going through some recency bias with Matt Mervis not producing. Similar like Busch, both destroyed AAA in a pretty large sample. Understandably, the expectations were varied. I share those varied expectations. In one sense, I liked the potential. In the other sense, I was skeptical because of his age. But in the early sample, his line almost looks identical to what you saw in AAA last year from a plate discipline approach. We're talking about a contact rate around 80% from Michael Busch, a chase rate around 23%. Now, to put the ruler against that, he's well better than league average by chase by 7 points and well better by contact by about 5 points. Now, if you look at what he's doing well, it's the inside pitch value. They were attacking him on fastballs a lot in the first week. Even our friend Michael Cerami of Bleacher Nation pointed this out. Now, if you look at his actual contact rate or whiff rate, you can see some improvements and some stark, obvious trends right now. On the left, you see his contact or whiff rate from last season. The more blue means less whiffs. So the deeper the ocean color, the less he's whiffing. And if you put your eyes towards the right portion of the strike zone of 2023, you're going to see some light blue, you're going to see some green, you're going to see some yellow. That means he's whiffing more. Now, if you go to 2024, put your eyes towards that right part of the strike zone, you see a deep blue purple. That means he's whiffing on those pitches at under a 10 or 5% rate. In 2023, against those pitches, he was whiffing against those in a small sample with LA at around a 25 to 35% rate. That's the difference. So he's able to turn on these pitches, and you saw it even in Sunday. Slider in, it did hang. It was towards the lower inside portion of the plate. Boom, moonshot. You saw pitchers go up and into him with fastballs. Boom, turning on them, double down the line. So he is performing well against trends and scouting reports that were designed to get him out last season in that small sample. It's encouraging to see, and it's exceeding my own expectations.
Yeah, it's looking like a very nice experiment so far. And as people in the chat have noted, Matt Mervis is raking again at AAA. It's nice to see. Obviously, it didn't translate at the MLB level. The Cubs have a lot of guys, Brendan, that at some point you may need to turn into other things. And it's not necessarily Matt Mervis, but when you have a guy that's raking at AAA and you maybe don't have a spot for him, but you do need, I don't know, bullpen help, like at some
That's
point,
what they did with Nelson
Velasquez,
Velasquez,
right?
That's what they did with Nelson Velasquez. You trade him away. It was kind of a varying opinion of whether they liked the value in return. But Jose Cuas is a high volatile, high ceiling, high risk pitcher. And that ultimately may be what they use someone like Matt Mervis for, although he has to regain some of the value he lost because of that extremely poor stretch at the big league level last season.
Yes. So I think that's, yeah, look, again, it's a long season. And at this point, you're still waiting for the league to continue to make adjustments back on Michael Busch. I do see our friend Ryan Herrera in the chat.
Put
Hello,
his comment
Ryan.
up on the show right here. Thank you, Ryan.
Good evening, Ryan. Our friend Greg Huss in the chat.
Look
And that's
at
not to say that you're all not our friends in the YouTube chat, but
yeah,
just saying hi.
love you, Greg.
Yes. So the league's still going to make some adjustments on Michael Busch. They're going to see how he's feasting on what Brendan was just talking about and adjust back, and we'll see if he can continue to have this success. But as we noted, when you look through this lineup, you have a lot of guys that are not really producing right now. They've needed somebody to kind of carry the offense like this. And I don't know how many people would have expected that person to be Michael Busch and Seiya Suzuki. But it's a welcome sight. I did see some mention of his defense at first.
He's got to
And
catch the baseball. He's got to
yes,
catch the baseball.
yes,
It's not
but
acceptable.
again, it's a position that he's still finding his own at, getting his footing, to use a kind of literal
They
term.
got to give him a Wilson glove. That's the issue. Keep saying that.
Right. At some point, we got to get this podcast
Listen,
sponsored by.
It's my
by Wilson.
dream. It's my dream.
So it looks good, and it's nice to see him hitting these homers. It's nice to see him carrying this offense, and it's, when you make a trade of a prospect of Jackson Ferris's caliber, and I know people, he's struggled to start this year, but so what? He's a very talented left-handed pitching prospect that's 19, 20, whatever he is. So when you trade a prospect of that caliber, it is always a little nerve-wracking, and you put a lot of pressure on what the return is. And you've started to see some better things out of Almonte, and Michael Busch is doing stuff that no Cubs rookies have done since the beginning of the 1900s. So it's a nice place to be 15 games in.
What happened in the beginning of the 1900s, Corey? Can you remember? People sometimes
forget. He's the first Cubs rookie to do it since 1901, hit 4 in a row.
Okay.
7 years later, excuse me, 6 years later, the Cubs would win their first World Series, and then they would go back to back in 1908.
Yes. In 07 and 08, people do forget that.
Yes.
And then in 16, they won again. So, 3-time world championships. Yep.
Yes, correct.
Just putting it out there.
Is very
sure
correct. So I see a lot of what the chat is talking about. We're going to hit our first ad break here, but we do want to talk about the bullpen. Really great performance from, Mark Leiter Jr. on Sunday. Some of the other guys, I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about Hector Neris, who has not looked good. Stuff hasn't looked great. And we will talk about Morel's defense at third this weekend in Seattle. Some really nice plays from Christopher Morel at third base. So that was nice to see. We will talk about the starts from Jordan Wicks and Javier Assad. Brendan has some graphs.
Maybe some Hendricks discussion. A lot of talk about Hendricks. People are all over the place with Kyle Hendricks right now. They want to put him away. They want to get him off the team, Corey.
Well, yeah, we'll see. You and I have touched on that, and they're 9-6. It's they win on Sundays now. That's a nice thing. So maybe we're going to try to keep the vibes up, but we'll see. Anyway, let's hit our first ad break here, and we'll come back and talk about Jordan Wicks and Javier Assad.
Okay, first ad break here is from Game Time. Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. If you want tickets to the Cubs D-backs game tomorrow on Monday, Game Time will have the best last-minute deals. I've used Game Time. I've compared it to other sites, and I know because of that, I'm getting the best deal. And I like how they have customer service available to help you through any questions that you might have. Right now, you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and take the guesswork out of buying those tickets with Game Time. And for a limited time, all users get $20 off any MLB purchase of $150 or more in the Game Time app with code FIRSTPITCH. Terms do apply. That's code FIRSTPITCH for $20 off. It does end today. So if you want to get tickets for the upcoming series in Arizona or back at Wrigley Field towards the end of next week, use code again FIRSTPITCH for $20 off today. Second break here from PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They are the easiest and the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. Baseball season is underway. Don't miss out on your chance for winning with your favorite players from the diamond in your PrizePicks entries, whether strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs. Take your pick of more or less and add them to your PrizePicks entry today. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in just a few steps. Here's a potential bet tomorrow. Don't listen to me. Just, if you want to make this bet, Nico Hoerner and Dansby Swanson to both hit home runs Monday night. You want to make that bet? Go to prizepicks.com/CHGO and use code CHGO for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/CHGO and use code CHGO. Pick more, pick less. It is that easy.
All right, Brendan, let's talk some pitching.
Let's do it.
Interesting set of starts that we saw this weekend. Jordan Wicks on Friday takes the loss, 4 innings, 5 hits, 4 earned, 4 walks, but 6 strikeouts. Obviously not the full line you want to see, but it is intriguing. He's getting a good amount of whiffs, Brendan, which is definitely one of the things that stood out so far about Jordan Wicks. On Saturday, we got another gem from Shota Imanaga, 5 1/3, 5 hits, no earned runs, 2 walks, and 4 Ks. So apparently he is human enough to walk batters.
I guess so.
Unfortunately so.
Disappointing.
And then on Sunday, Javier Assad picking up the win, 5 2/3, 4 hits, 2 earned, 1 walk, and 6 strikeouts. Javier Assad sitting pretty with a 2.16 ERA on the season. I know you have some specific stuff you wanted to talk about with these guys. We did have a question in the CHGO Cubs Discord specifically about Jordan Wicks that I think you were going to touch on or something along those lines. But thoughts on the pitching staff. I think the one thing that jumps out is something that we talked about a ton last year and is going to continue to be an issue until you get Shota a little more settled and stabilized with his new routine, his new team, his new league, and Justin Steele back and Jameson Taillon in the fold and kind of up to full speed. Length.
Yes.
When you have a bullpen that is figuring things out and you've already sent someone down and you've already lost one of your top producers from last year.
Signing Julio Teheran.
You're bringing Julio Teheran in to do what? I'm not sure, but do something. And one of the things that you'd like from your starters is length. So the numbers that I just read out, obviously not doing that. Now, at the same time, the 3 guys that pitched this weekend for the Cubs all still kind of finding themselves at the major league level. You have 2 guys in Wicks and Assad who got a lot of starts last year, but were playing different roles and beginning their MLB careers at this level and in the rotation. And Shota, who obviously is new to this country and this league. So expecting everybody to go 6, 7, 8 innings, not the best plan and not really something you can rely on. But it also does play into that conversation about Kyle Hendricks that folks in the chat are having and that we have had. He is also someone who you at this moment have not been able to rely upon for length because he struggled very mightily that third time through the order and as he's gone deeper in the game. So what did you think of the performances? And obviously you can dive into the specifics and the pitch shapes and things like that you want to, but on a general level, when you're looking at this pitching staff and trying to balance letting some of these guys develop, grow, and adjust as major league pitchers, but also not getting enough length. You don't want to tax your bullpen too much. You're trying to figure out who you can rely upon in the bullpen. How do you feel about this pitching staff right now and kind of how Craig Counsell has handled the beginning of this season?
There's been some controversy with Counsell. There was controversy today. Some folks wanted Luke Little instead of Yency Almonte. There's been discussions about taking out Javier Assad too early in San Diego. This is still the first 2-3 weeks. When I look at the first few weeks, I think, what are they doing to inspire confidence that long-term production, long-lasting production that goes into the 6th and 7th innings is viable? And what I've seen so far does suggest that is viable. Jordan Wicks, a lot of concern is that he's not going deep into games. However, Jordan Wicks in Texas did not go deep into that game due to awful defense, where he was on track to go deep games, had a few unfortunate errors. Jordan Wicks, the ability for him to go deep into games requires multiple diverse pitch types. Then the question becomes, well, does he have those multiple diverse pitch types? And the answer is absolutely yes. And in fact, he's using those diverse pitch types more than he did when he debuted in 2023. Slider, cutter, curveball, changeup, four seam, sinker. That's 6 pitch types. To compare that, We have Ben Brown, 2 pitch types. Difficult to imagine him going deeper into games unless he's Justin Steele 2.0. But as we know, there's not many Justin Steels out there. Similar, Hayden Wesneski's right now in Iowa because he only has 2 pitch types that work. Jordan Wicks has 6 pitch types and, in fact, used sliders and curveballs almost exhaustively to get the Dodgers out last week. Now, briefly, I'll go into the pitch shape of his four seam because we did get a discussion topic about that in our Discord, and I'll throw it back to you. But you can see what Jordan Wicks and how he's going to succeed in the future because he has a very straight four seam and he has a great changeup. That's his foundation. The question that we were asked and others have pointed out was, is Jordan Wicks' fastball better now than it was last year? And the reason is in the early returns, it looks as if his fastball has more carry on it, and it looks as if he may be changing his release point. Now, the answer to that is we don't know yet. There's overlap in just randomness this year versus last year. If you look at his release point, you can see on the right, it is lower. So all of the red, yellow, orange, that's where he's mostly releasing the pitch. Anything lower means he's releasing the pitch lower. Anything higher means he's releasing the pitch higher. Anything closer to the right means he's letting go of the pitch closer to his shoulder. So he has a lower release point, but there is overlap with what we saw last year. Whether this is meaningful or significant, hard to tell because it's only been 3 starts. Then the question becomes, well, what does his fastball look like? Well, his fastball, if you look at the shape of it, it does have slightly more carry. Anything above the red line means he has more carry than he did last year. Anything to the left of the vertical red line means it has less cut. So it is straighter and it is thrown with a little bit more carry by about 2 inches. Is that meaningful? Hard to tell because those pitches that he's thrown this year overlap with many pitches he threw last year. Now, what does that look like? If you look at the blue four-seam fastball here versus the red four-seam fastball, which represents 2023, you can see the lower starting point and the release point, but also it tends to have a little bit more carry on it with that release point. Again, all this comes back to, is this meaningful? Is this intentional? The only way to find that out is if you go ask the pitcher himself. So who knows? And is this something to be excited about? I don't know. I was excited about his four seam last year, regardless, but it's early things like this that does make watching the sports fun and inspires questions.
I think when you say things like that, you'd have to go up and ask him. Ryan was in the chat. I think this is the opportunity where you sort of just, go do it. Go ask him.
I mean, Ryan always does. I bother Ryan too much.
Yeah.
I had Ryan ask Nico a question about 2 years ago, and I guess
and that's why he can't hit now.
maybe that's why. So we got to be careful with the questions.
Well, so on Wicks, what is what you're talking about? What is keying the K rates up, the whiff rates up? What is keying that difference from last year that Jordan Wicks is generating more whiffs at a higher rate than last year?
I think it's partially randomness in lineup. It's been 3 starts, but he is throwing more sliders and more curveballs. He did because he even said in his second start against the Dodgers did not have the changeup that day. So I think that is part of it. I will say though, I think the concerns about him not going deep are unfounded right now. I think if you make a bet, you have to bet that because he has 6 pitch types and developing sliders and curveballs that he's comfortable with, I would bet that translates to deeper starts in a big 6-month sample.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. Before we hit our next break, I do want to ask, because it's something that I see a lot in the chat, and I think there's been particular concern on, even just watching the games, and we've talked about. What do you make? And everything we're talking about, it's such small samples at this point. I mean, we're barely midway through April at this point. The Cubs have played 15 games. As I've said before, you can pick many a player. If I'm remembering correctly, Anthony Rizzo was notorious for the cold start.
Awful.
And then by the end of the year, he's got a 950 OPS, easy peasy.
Yeah.
What do you make of Hector Neris right now? Because for more than anything, there was the big rain game and the comeback that they almost let up early in the year at Wrigley. And he walked a few guys. They had to pitch out of the bases loaded jam. Kind of wrote that off to the weather and everything. But it does look a little flat Brendan. It doesn't really, when you look at his pedigree and how good he was for the Houston Astros and the role that he was playing on a team that was perennially in the World Series or the ALCS, quite literally every year in the ALCS, doesn't really look like that guy. Now, again, it's April 15th. It's these off seasons have gotten weird with when guys sign and how they're reporting and all this other stuff. Do you have any particular concern there? Do you share the concern? What do you think from what you're seeing of Hector Neris right now?
Not liking it. You watch him today in Sunday's game. I don't like it. What am I supposed to say? He's throwing
Okay.
balls like crazy. So, of course, that does not inspire confidence. If you want to be realistic and rational about it, you can point to his splitter shape being exactly identical now compared to what it was last season. If you want to be pessimistic, you can point to his velo being down by 1 mile per hour. But as we talk about, if we zoom out, 2 weeks is still not enough. It's an unpopular thing to say because we all want to look at the first few weeks as representative of what's to come. And I share that, and I'm guilty of making those same types of ideas and projections, but it's still 2 weeks in horrible weather in Chicago. San Diego is also pretty cold. I had 2 jackets. I was shivering out there, Corey. So until like the weather heats up and he gets more comfortable,
Yeah.
let's see. They have to rely on Neris. He has to be a guy, especially now.
Yeah, I mean, especially without Julian Merriweather, and you're trying to kind of find the shape of this bullpen. I do agree with you. I mean, getting these guys back is going to really add a lot of color on what this team is truly capable of. Now,
Yeah.
when you're talking about Justin Steele, a guy who almost won the Cy Young, that's, again, I always say this, it's the expert analysis that I aim to provide as someone doing a Cubs podcast. When the Cubs get their best pitcher back, they're going to be better. All
I
right. You
think that's a
guys look
good
out for that.
that's a good thing to say.
No, but it will create some interesting options for Counsell as far as who is in the bullpen, who is getting rest between starts, who you can get more out of by maybe changing their role. And I don't know what that all is going to look like because we don't know when everybody's going to come back, and they're maybe going to have to make some tough decisions on certain guys. But it is early, and I think with the pitching staff still trying to figure some of those things out, you got to give it a little bit of time. I know that it's frustrating, and especially you look at this weekend and some of those games in San Diego, a lot of close games. We saw this a lot last year, so the spotlight is going to continue to be, I think, on this pitching staff for the most part, because Cubs are playing a lot of close games. Even the game in San Diego where they went up 8-0 ended up being a close game.
Oh,
So
did it? Was it a close game at the end, Corey? That 8-0 game?
listen, you chose the game to go to. I don't know. I mean, what do you
Well, at least
want
I
from
had
me?
red vines and blue moons. So
Yes. So it's all just to say that it is still early. It's going to be a topic of conversation, and I understand that it's going to be under a microscope, and guys are going, fans are going to have a particularly short leash with a lot of relievers, and maybe at times these starters, because you're going to feel like you have other options. And as far as the bullpen goes, you're going to feel like, hey, like, we don't want to blow games. We can't be blowing games when the offense is coming through, and that's going to put a lot of scrutiny on these guys.
yeah,
So it's early. They're going to have some stuff to sort out, but I think, again, to kind of come full circle, to be sitting at 9-6 while we're still having these conversations, you feel pretty good about that, because like the offense, where guys have struggled and not come out the gate performing the way that you want them to, some of this stuff you expect to get settled out. At some point, you will get Justin Steele back. Now, can I guarantee that he's immediately going to rip into Cy Young form? No.
yes, you can.
I feel very confident in it. And what to expect from Jameson Taillon, we'll talk about that when we come back from this break. The short answer is I have no clue, because I didn't know on any given batter last year what we were going to expect. But you are going to get some reinforcement. So I do think hopefully that can stabilize some of that. Guys will start going deeper as the years goes on, and hopefully these conversations and questions become fewer and far between.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, before I do the ad break, just quick generalization. You insert Steele, Tyone back into the lineup, then, or the starting rotation, then that establishes depth in the back of the bullpen. So when that happens, I'm going to feel really good. And then separately from the lineup perspective, my concerns were, can they get production from first and third base? Well, the early answer to that is yes, and actually more than what I expected. So I have to feel good given the context of everything going on right now. Let's rip into this ad break. We'll come back out and continue this discussion. Speaking of Blue Moon, some beers can say they're brewed for baseball. Blue Moon is brewed by baseball. I got a Blue Moon last week at the Padres game. Thank God I did, because it helped me get through that 8-0 blown game. It's bold flavor, bright explosion of color, an iconic orange slice ritual guarantee a one-of-a-kind beer experience, perfect for upcoming summer weather and even right now in the spring. Bring the ballpark to you with Blue Moon Belgian style wheat ale. It's a one of a kind every time. Get Blue Moon delivered by visiting get.bluemoonbeer.com/CHGO to see your delivery options. That's get.bluemoonbeer.com/CHGO. Blue Moon, made brighter. Celebrate responsibly. Blue Moon Brewing, Colorado, Golden, Colorado. And before we get back into it, quick reminder, check out being a diehard member of CHGO. This will get you access to our members only Discord where we talk about the games. We even get a topic requests for this podcast, including the Jordan Wicks segment we just went through. You can also read Ryan Herrera's articles, Jared Willis's articles. Ryan just posted a very in-depth Christopher Morel piece about his plate discipline and stabilization, all the nerdy stuff that Ryan always writes about. Check it out. Find out more details also by meeting up with Cody this Friday at the Friday 120 Club in the bleachers at Wrigley Field and before and after the game. Corey.
All right. So, we talked about some of the bullpen struggles. I do want to, shout out quickly Adbert Alzolay, right? Tough game in the aforementioned blown 8-0 lead. Obviously gives up the bomb. They lose that game. Really nice response from him these last few games, and especially this weekend today, closing these games out. Again, playing a lot of close games. So I did want to we're talking about Neris. Are we concerned about that? Are we concerned about this? Did want to shout out Kyle Hendricks. I got Kyle Hendricks on the brain. I'm reading all the comments. People are talking about getting rid of him and etc.
Can we just before you transition there though, Kyle Hendricks, this quick little thing. What do you think of Kyle Hendricks right now? It has grown. The angst has grown over the past week when we did our Sunday show last week.
It's tough because he's a guy that has done this in the past where things look a little weird and he takes time to settle in, but then he kind of finds a rhythm and cranks off a handful of really great starts. I think it's tough for this team because you do feel this kind of looming, like, okay, if Taillon comes back, who moves? If Steele comes back, who moves? And you start to get to the point where you are more excited maybe to see some other guys, and how long is your patience for that? But Kyle has the pedigree, and I always defer to you. If you tell me the velo and the shape of everything looks good, then I say, hey, he'll figure it out eventually. But I am also at the point where, if you got Justin Steele and Jameson Taillon back tomorrow, like, I want to keep seeing Wicks and Assad, man. And especially I've always liked, I like lefties, especially that, throw a certain way. So I've always had a thing for Jordan Wicks, even, when they drafted him. It's my type, as Brian Smith from Bleacher Nation used to say. But with Assad, like, he's earned the spot. If they thought he was better suited in a different role, it's okay. But with Assad, I want to see him. So now Kyle Hendricks is obviously one of the most, I think, important players in Cubs history for several reasons.
What's one reason?
He started Game 7 of the World Series that Chicago Cubs won.
That they won, correct? Yes,
correct. So it's a tough discussion, but I don't know. We'll see what happens in his next start. Again, it's only a handful of starts, and this the reason I preach patience, not that I necessarily believe he's going to turn it around. I'm not sure. You're the pitching guy, and at this point, he's older in his career. Who knows? He's a very unique player in the first place with how slow he throws and the way he goes about his business. The fact that he's gotten this much success is not something a lot of people would have predicted in the first place. So I can't tell you what the rest of the year holds. But we've had this exact same conversation before. I see the comments in the chat. He's washed. Time to move on. Go back to parts of last year, year before. Same conversation. This is not the first time that this has happened. And I'm not saying that you can just do that forever and he'll come out of it forever. But he has the pedigree that he does for a reason. I wouldn't give up on it after 3 starts.
So I see Cody here. We'll get Cody's thoughts.
Yeah.
I've said this a few times now, and Cody and I think talked about this as well last week, but 3 starts, the alternatives have to be considered. We see Assad. People think Assad deserves to start over Kyle Hendricks. Assad today couldn't make it through the 6th yet again. Now let's compare Kyle Hendricks at his best in the 6th inning versus Javier Assad at his best throughout the game. Assad, command escaped him in the 6th. Velocity dipped a little bit, suggestive of fatigue. If we want deep starts, Assad right now does not guarantee you deep starts. Who has a better likelihood of getting deep into a game? Javier Assad, Ben Brown, or Kyle Hendricks? The answer right now, given even the early season struggles, because of the track record of a decade and even as recent as last September, is Kyle Hendricks. Now, with Kyle Hendricks now, you look at the changeup shape. Changeup shape looks good. You look at the four-seam shape. Four-seam shape looks good. You look at the velocity. Well, he's throwing 87, 88, 89, 90. So what's the problem? Now, people will point to, oh, Jake Arrieta in his old age did poorly with the Cubs. Well, Jake Arrieta came back throwing 4 miles per hour slower with a slider that did not cut anymore. Whereas Kyle Hendricks has the same stuff and the command has been off. So again, zoom out. It's been 3 starts. Is Kyle Hendricks washed? That's a dumb thing to say in 3 starts. Could he be washed? Maybe, but to use 3 starts as your proof is idiotic and completely disrespectful from what he's done for the past 10 years. No offense to the chat, but let's zoom out. Take away your magnifying glass and look at what this guy has done. I can't believe I have to defend Kyle Hendricks over 3 starts. I'm not even saying he's long-lasting going to perform this year, but we do have to zoom out a little bit and ask the questions of what's the alternatives and what's he doing right now.
No, I do hear you, and I want to give Cody a more formal introduction.
Up.
But yes, we do have we've gotten Brendan hot. I
over here.
I understand what you mean, and again, that's part of why I said like we've had this same conversation before. He may be washed, I don't know, but the stuff doesn't really suggest that, and we have had this exact same conversation.
And when we had that last discussion, he tore his shoulder. So hopefully that's not what's going on again.
But we'll see. Again, and also this is something that they're monitoring. They want to see Ben Brown too. They want to see what they can get out of Assad. I've said this before too. Trust me, Jed Hoyer would love nothing more than if the entire rotation was made up of guys that are in arbitration or pre-arb. They're not deliberately skewing away from that. They want to see it too. But it's 3 starts. Kyle Hendricks has a pedigree. If it continues like this, they'll cut bait. I have or move him to the bullpen or figure something out. I have no worry that they will just ride Kyle Hendricks and ruin their season for the sake of Kyle Hendricks. If this continues, they will figure it out. So
Cody smile. Cody, how we doing?
We've got our guy Cody Del Mendo here. Welcome, Cody.
I'm just glad that no one can say that I'm the only meatball idiot on this podcast anymore. Brendan just gave us the biggest meatball moment of this entire CHGO Cubs podcast history.
Wow. I'm actually honored.
I tell people that me and Brendan are more alike than people think.
I know.
And he just proved it with that rant. I love it. I'm here for it. I absolutely am here for it. This is awesome.
I actually think it's a real argument, though, too.
So well, yeah. And I was going to mention that the whole Assad not being able to go as deep as what, we want even Hendricks to go. Like my expectation for Hendricks is to go 5 innings, 3 earned or less at this point in his career. And he obviously hasn't done that this year. He did go beyond that a handful of times last year. But again, we're talking about a guy that is supposed to be like their 4th or 5th best starter. And right now he's being asked to be like their 1st or 2nd just because of injuries. You know what I mean? So like you have to like, it's kind of like what you guys said, like you got to step out and look at it from a broader view, I guess. Like, yeah, he has to be better and he's not going to stay on the rotation if he keeps having starts like this. That's for sure. But he's earned enough of a leash to at least be given how many starts? He has 3 starts. I'm willing to go up to 10 with this guy because of who he is and the fact that no matter what, if things work out or don't work out, you still have some guys that you can feel good about, and the thing is also is like, we see all these injuries with pitchers this year. Like, I don't want to overwork Ben Brown. I don't want to overwork Cade Horton whenever he finally gets here. Like, the Cubs have to have some sort of idea of a pitch, like an innings limit for these guys. And that's what I'm thinking about. So to me, best case scenario is Kyle Hendricks is your 5th best starter by the time you're entering September. And you're getting contributions from all the guys that I just mentioned on top of who else is already in there. And one thing that I mentioned earlier this week too is that he's notoriously known for having bad starts in April, and then he gets it going.
I mean, he has a career like almost 5.5, 6 ERA in April.
Yeah,
so he's a California guy. He's from Southern California. I understand.
I do find it. I will say I find it rather interesting. We'll switch to a different topic because I don't want to. I feel like the last time I was in studio we talked a lot about Hendricks too, but the chat not with you on this. The chat is done here on our YouTube chat with Kyle Hendricks. So take that for what you will. And look, again, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but
sometimes your opinions are not, found in the reality. I have strong opinions too that are not found in reality.
Man, all I'm going to tell you is if Kyle gets lit up in his next start, you are going to.
I'm not saying Kyle's not washed. I'm saying just zoom out and use more than a 3-game sample where he's throwing 90 miles per hour. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I hear it.
And his changeup. I'm going to show a graph before we move on because I'm getting a little heated up. 30 seconds.
Making it while you didn't have this prepared. What are you making it while we're
literally
talking?
just made it. I'm getting heated up. Here it is. Okay. Changeup, bottom, middle panel, bottom. Changeup location, bottom left corner of the strike zone. All red, all orange. Exactly the same location as what you saw in 2023 with the changeup. Zoom over to the right. Sinker, 2023, inside of right-handed batters. On the bottom right sinker, up and away, middle in to all batters. Sinker command, bad. That's the issue. Changeup looks fine. Same changeup the last season. Velocity is fine, but the velo is just not the command is not there, but the velo is. So you have to hedge your bets. Do you think Kyle can return his command? I think so. It's not a stuff issue. It's not similar to what we saw with Arrieta. Could Arrieta throw 97 miles per hour in 2021? No, he was old. This is a very different conversation that we're having.
I also I want to point out, related to Assad, is that I think that with how effective he can be as a starter just increases how effective he could be as a bullpen guy. And as you guys were talking about, the bullpen needs help, man. I don't know. Just to me, the bullpen could be even better with Assad in there. But I love Assad for the sheer fact that he can just be used in so many different ways.
Yeah. Well, and I change the topic here.
To that point, I do want to address because I'm not sure. Sometimes I'm not sure if the YouTube chat is talking amongst itself or they're talking to us. It's because sometimes they say stuff that I don't think is what we said, but I'm not sure who else they're saying. So I want to point out, we all, because I'm confused, we all love Javier Assad. I made clear that he was great last year. He's been great to start this year. And I feel like I literally said, I do want to see what he can do. I'm really intrigued by him and I want to see him in that rotation. I think the discussion was, and to Brendan's point, what is the best usage of this pitching staff? And they're going to
optimize
have to make
pitching staff.
Yeah, they're going to have to make decisions on who is starting and who is not starting. And that is going to go beyond just Javier Assad. You have 2 potential guys coming back in the nearish future. So I do just want to make that clear. There was some comments that seem to suggest we don't like Assad or we're really excited to get him out of the rotation. That's not the point. That's not what anybody said. So just clearing that up. We love Javier Assad. I do want to ask you, Brendan, and Cody, but Brendan, he's your guy. We've talked about this privately. We are 15 games into the potential experiment with Nico, maybe trying to get more lift or trying to add a little bit more power, and not a great start to the season for Nico Hoerner. So what are you seeing there? Are you concerned about it at all? Again, it's same thing. It's 15 games, so hard to take too much from it, but this feels very uncharacteristic for Nico Hoerner when you see these numbers and just the overall performance at the plate.
He's whiffing more, obviously taking more risks. Dustin Kelly used the language, taking more chances in spring training when he was talking about Nico and his power. Whether it's intentional or not seems unclear. Nico in his interviews has not hinted at an explicit change in his swing. Although, again, Dustin Kelly has hinted that there's more power in there. Perhaps this would be a thing. Visually, it looks as if he is trying to hit for more power, popping up more. But at the same time, we're also noticing, which may be going undernoticed due to the whiff issues and the lack of batting average, he's being selective. So right now, his expected weight on base average, which is too early to even say anything, but because of his high walk rate, is around 350. And his chase rate right now is around the same tier as Christopher Morel, whom we just talked about. So in one sense, he's more patient. In another sense, he's whiffing more, and that could be a concern. But I imagine Nico, given his track record of adjusting fast and adjusting, making significant changes, that it's within him to make a change and a decision about how to improve and maximize his performance. At the same time, I do like the selection, the aggression, and the patience he's shown that has been new and something we have yet to see throughout his career. Am I okay with Nico right now? Of course, you need more production. Am I concerned about it? Well, I'm not happy about it. It's just a matter of what this means for the next 2, 3, 4 months.
Yeah.
I don't know, but at least he's not chasing, and that's a good thing to see.
Well, and so to you, Cody, I guess more broadly, we also see, Cody Bellinger off to a slow start. Cody Bellinger, nearing the territory where you might have to start picking him and who you got just to get him going, which is a spot that's normally reserved for the, Nick Madrigals of the world.
I did take Bellinger today, though, actually.
Brendan,
you
don't get your picks in. Don't make a face at me when I'm talking about who you got. You barely play the game. But Cody, anyone in the offense that you're particularly concerned is such a strong word when you're like 3 weeks into the season, but when you're seeing some of the numbers that are a little slow to get going here, anybody you have your eye on, or are you kind of not worried about that? Because I feel like at some point it's early in the season and we've seen him go through these stretches, but the kind of devil's advocate of it all might say the Cody Bellinger contract did involve some risk. He had only proved it for the year, come off a lot of injuries where the performance was really bad. So there wasn't necessarily a guarantee he was just going to come out the gate rolling again. So anybody in this offense, like when you look through the numbers outside of, say, a Suzuki, Michael Busch, Christopher Morel, that you're at all worried about, keeping an eye on, anything like that?
I mean, to me, the only guys I'm really worried about, and it's not even really like a real worry, is like Nico and Bellinger. And Bellinger, he's just been brutal on the road trip, man. Like, and the one hit he had today was a slow dribbler down the first base line that, was a hit because Castillo can't, throw a ball to first base while running in the opposite direction, right? But the thing about Bellinger that makes me feel better is that his K rate's still right around what it was last year. And when he was going bad with the Dodgers 2 years ago, and even the year before that, his K rate was like 27%. And so to see it at 17% still, and he's still walking and getting on base that way, it gives me some optimism that the hits are going to come. But there's been way too many times on this road trip where he's hit the ball and I feel like he's hit it hard and it's going somewhere and it ends up being a lazy fly ball. And I'm just confused, and it makes me question, A, why do I like this game? And B,
I do that all the time.
What is going on? Like, what is is this not a real bat? Like, I don't get it. Like, there were multiple times. And so it does that makes me a little concerned, because like the big concern with Bellinger and like why they should re-sign him was, the batted ball data, and so I like that we're not seeing a ton of strikeouts, but I feel like we're seeing a lot of lazy flyouts, and we need more line drives at the very least. If you're like, I don't expect him to hit a ton of homers, like in like 30 plus homers, but I expect him to, be in that 20 home run range, but someone who gets on base at a decent clip and, is an effective hitter in the middle of the order,
Yeah. And I think, one of the things you look at too, I mean, obviously his BABIP, his batting average on balls in play, way down. And you brought it up. One of the things that worked for him last year was that 2-strike approach. and being okay with making some weaker contact, just putting the ball in play, softer line drives, those ground balls, that he can hit deep in the shortstop hole that he can beat out because he's got good speed, things like that. Haven't seen him get a lot of that luck. Now, it is just that. It is sometimes luck. So whether that reproduces or not is something that we'll have to keep an eye on. He's also not hitting as many line drives to start this season. That percent is like 7% down from last year. But again, it's a few weeks of baseball, and hopefully he can iron some of that stuff out. But I do think that's the main takeaway. The K rate still looks good. It's still in that territory where he's going to be putting the ball in play more. And I think that luck will come. The better contact will come. And I think we can look forward to that. So I'm not worried about any of these guys. If Nico made a change, you're going to have to give time to adjust or see if he pulls back on this adjustment or anything like that. But he's a really good hitter. He has a very strong command of MLB pitching, his bat, and how it all works together. So if it takes time to work through this adjustment, he'll do it. We got to be patient with that. He just is too good of a hitter to look like this for an extended period of time.
With how good the offense has been this year, what I want from Nico right now, and this is like not even asking for much,
40 homers.
I'm asking for better base running than what he had in the 7th inning today. And I'm asking for no errors like he had against the Rockies, which he's been good defensively since that error against the Rockies. So he's doing good on that part. But like twice this week, he got, caught in a rundown trying to steal second base or just, whatever, playing around over there, So like that's what he's been good at his entire career, is being a great defensive player and a great base runner. So like at the very least, that's what we have to have. They have to get that from him. And I bring it around to say that he's mainly been doing all those things. So to see, I'm pretty glad that those aren't the reasons that it's affecting the offense for the most part. He's had some moments, but we're human. We all have moments. So it's not like it's an everyday thing. So
yeah. I want to look at this coming up Arizona series here, and then we're gonna wrap up. I do, for one moment though, Brendan. I know you tweeted this as we round out the show here, and I want to end on a really nice positive. Can you describe your personal reaction to that unassisted double play turn from Dansby Swanson in the game on Sunday, where the ball kind of bounced up on him, but he handled it anyway, took it to the bag? How did you feel watching that?
You ever like stand up too quickly and then you get stars in your eyes? Yeah, that's what it was.
Just like that.
I saw the ball hop a little bit, stars in my eyes. He fielded it unassisted, secured the out, saved Hector Neris's life, maybe. Yeah. Spectacular, Corey.
Yeah. So I do love seeing that. The defense still providing some really nice plays. And again, as we talked, we didn't necessarily get into it specifically, but some really nice plays, as you guys know, from Christopher Morel over at third base that were really nice to see, some tough plays. And hopefully those are the types of things that kind of add to his confidence over there. I think you don't necessarily expect him to make those plays all the time, but sometimes you make a few of those. It helps you settle in with some of the more simple ones. Like I can play over here. I know I can play over here. Like, just got to let things slow down a little bit. But
that's a good way of putting it. Let things slow down a little bit. We're getting a little bit too fast with some of these projections, if you will.
Brendan, you guys got Brendan hot. Let me tell you in the YouTube chat, you got Brendan hot.
I love it. I do it too. I get ahead of myself. I start reading into things too much. I get it. I'm telling from
Magical pisses him off and he texts me, "Fuck this guy." Just kidding.
I will also say I'm very thrilled at the way Craig Counsell has managed that. I haven't had to deal with him starting at third base a lot. So a tip of the cap to old Skip, Craig Counsell there. But
I love
the
Craig.
Cubs finish up this trip with 3 in Arizona against the defending National League champion Arizona Diamondbacks. 2 this is Mountain Time, Brendan. I don't know why my computer is showing me Mountain Time.
It's okay. Read the Mountain Time. We can subtract.
It's 6:40
by 1.
What, and that is what in Chicago? 7:40 or 8:40?
It's going to be 8:40.
8:40. So 2 8:40 starts and then 1 in the afternoon. Arizona 8-8 to start this season, so they have not, come out the gate hot or anything like that, but obviously a very solid team. And I think for me, like, if you can take 2 or 3 here, they're going to be really vibing in the Friday 120 Club this week and this weekend in Chicago. The weather is nice here. It's the vibes are going to be pretty good if you can survive this and take 2 of 3. That would just be an incredible trip. Of course, on the road, finishing up a long road trip, 1 of 3, it's not the end of the world. But if you can find a way to win this series, that would be a very, very strong road trip. And again, this stretch that started with those 3, and you took 2 from the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Listen, we just got to redeem ourselves from last September. Cody and I ruined the season by going to Chase Field. I apologize. We were at the extra inning game where stuff happened. We're here to redeem ourselves. Are we not producing Sunday wins? We are. So now it's time to produce Chase Field wins, and that's what we're going to do.
I will say that the good news is we're not getting the Diamondbacks playing at the rate they were playing in September last year. So
that was brutal.
Yeah, I mean, it's revenge season going to Arizona, man. I ain't gonna be there. I ain't going anywhere close to Chase Field ever again, brother. So
yeah, neither am I.
The other good news is you don't get to face Zach Gallen, who shoved against his former team today and gave the Cardinals the Zach Gallen revenge game. Also, Miles Michaelis now has a 5.61 earned run average since he threw at Ian Happ twice on purpose.
Quick aside, Cody, have you seen Miles? I call him Mikolas because he doesn't deserve to have his last name pronounced correctly.
Fair.
Have you seen a YouTube video of him eating a lizard?
No,
I will send you this. He ate a lizard in the he ate a lizard in the bullpen, I think in an independent game or it was some like weird game. I'll send it to you. He eats lizards.
Either way, they're coming off a win, so I like who the Cubs have set up this week. I mean, I'm optimistic about Kyle settling some people down on Tuesday, but Ben Brown tomorrow, coming off a great start against the Padres, and then I don't remember who starts on Wednesday,
Wicks.
but yeah, Jordan Wicks, who has been solid. I just think his issues are sometimes he, from a not knowing anything is about pitching like Brendan. He has those 1 or 2 innings where he throws like 30 pitches, and that's why he's not being able to go deeper in the games. But the stuff is there, and he has the mentality. And I've loved most of what we've seen this year, but against Seattle, that one particular inning wasn't great. But yeah, I mean, not having to face Gallen is huge. But
yeah,
their
so
rotation is pretty solid still.
The Cubs will get Merrill Kelly, who's been quite good to start the season. On Monday, Tommy Henry, the Michigan man, Brendan. I know you knew that already, but
you know Craig Counsell's son plays at Michigan?
Does he?
Yeah.
No, I didn't
know.
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah. Get him
There
to
you
Wrigley. You know what I mean? Tommy Henry, the Michigan man, left-hander on Tuesday, and Brandon Pfaadt, the right-hander. Very good, pitcher and prospect last year coming up for the Diamondbacks, but has struggled to start this year. So, and then again, in order for the Cubs, Ben Brown, Kyle Hendricks, and Jordan Wicks before the Cubs come back to Wrigley. So I think that's where we'll leave you. It ultimately, it's one of those weeks where you feel pretty good about it, but you also feel like, man, if they just hold on to that big lead to start that Padres series, you're taking all these series and you're feeling over the moon. But that's what happens when you go out west. These West Coast trips are usually pretty difficult, and to get through it without some major disaster is a really good place to be. And they've really already done that, really, regardless of what happens in this Diamondback series. But they have a chance to put the stamp on a really, really good road trip to start this year. Come back to Chicago. It's getting warm, and let's get this offense really kicking into gear here.
How is the weather in Chicago? Is it getting warmer?
Today it was 80 today.
It was great today.
Yeah.
Really? That makes me happy. Good for you guys.
So the bats hopefully are going to heat up. When the Cubs do win in Arizona, Brendan kind of spoiled it by mentioning that. But instead of the beer bat, Cody's going to be chugging a victory lizard in celebration of Arizona.
I actually did do the beer bat today already. It was on my own YouTube channel, but I did record my own video on my phone that I was just going to put up after we ended the show. So
nice.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm not going to do another one today.
No, that's bad. I think that's bad juju.
Yeah.
They didn't win twice. You can't do 2 beer bats.
Yeah.
So hopefully, a nice start. Ben Brown can continue showing us what he has here at the major league level. Kyle Hendricks can right the ship, and then Jordan Wicks can take things home on Wednesday before the Cubs are at home on Thursday to welcome the Miami Marlins, who as of right now have only won 3 games. So hopefully finish up this road trip strong and then come feast back at beautiful, historic Wrigley Field. Brendan and I will talk to you next Sunday. Cody, Luke, Ryan, of course, in the studio with you throughout the week. They will have your post-game coverage throughout the week. Don't forget the Friday 120 Club is back this week at beautiful, historic Wrigley Field. We appreciate your support of everything going on at CHGO and the CHGO Cubs podcast. For Brendan Miller, Cody Del Mendo, Pat Hughes. We will talk to you next week. And as always, go Cubs.
We all silly like the mayor.